I vouched for you because I know who you are.
This is not who you are.
I tried, I failed, and I disappointed you.
It's about removing what's getting in the way.
Like, you can see where somebody can get to, but they... Hey team, welcome back to another incredible episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell. Today I'm joined again by the lovely Christine, Jewell.
You like Christine. To say it like that.
I do. I like to say it like that. And the cowboy coach, Jon Anderson. Welcome to the show, guys.
Howdy, howdy.
Let's do it. Today we're diving into this topic around how do you, like, what do you do when you have someone where you can see their potential, but they're not showing up like it, right? Like, you can see the potential and where they can go, what they could do, where they go with their career, how they could be performing at a higher level in their current role, but they can't see it for themselves. They're just sort of going through the motions. This comes up a lot in probably a couple different ways. One will be later stage career. This comes up a lot in discovery calls right now, where somebody is maybe on a sales team, they're later stage, they've got their book of business, they're content, right? They're happy. And it's like, I don't want to push. I don't want to give you an extra 5% growth this year. I don't want to give you 10% growth this year, because that's more work for me, right? And I'm happy. Like, I like my current customers. I don't want to go get more of them. So that sometimes that comes up. And then also, I think just, in people who are maybe stuck, just kind of stuck in the doldrums of life and the career, where they're just not pushing beyond, and then sometimes you have somebody who's good and they can get even more, but they're just not ready yet. So that's what we're going to dive into today, just to kind of set the stage. Christine, I'm going to go to you first on this one. But like, you see someone on your team, you see someone around you who you can just see the potential. And I think you have such a great background in this because of your experience in running the fitness studio. Like, you can see where somebody can get to, but they're not even aware of what's possible yet, because they're probably even ignorant to what is possible. How do you break them out of that? How do you introduce someone to what's potentially possible for them?
Well, you use the example of the fitness studio. Back in the day, I used to, be an athlete. No, I spent a lot of time in the athletic world. I spent a lot of time in fitness training, mindset coaching for athletes, all of that. And I think the principle still applies. I'm going to just use a really basic principle here. When someone, let's just use the example of somebody wanting to build a six-pack. This is totally like, right? But it's like, I want to be muscular. I want to be strong and muscular. And I want to be toned and fit. And the reality is, like, the muscle's already there. Do we get to build more muscle? Yes. But underneath whatever's there is a six-pack. Every single person right here, right now already has that abdominal tissue. It's already there. It's already in them. The thing is not about, you need to become something that you're not. It's about removing what's getting in the way, removing our ability to see what's already there. There was that great story that we often hear and share about when Michelangelo was working on the statue of David. And, it was a slab of stone. It was a slab of marble. And the question was, how did you get the statue of David out of this marble? Like, it was just a piece of rock, basically. How did you see it? And he said, well, David was always in there. I just had to chisel away the excess. And so I'm going to just start out the gate that I believe the quality and the character of a great leader is to be able to prophesy or speak over people the truth of who they already are, but they maybe don't have awareness of it. So even this idea of like, oh my gosh, you have so much potential. When I say that to someone, okay, and I'm challenging all of us who have been taught to see, I see the potential in others, but the question is, do you see who they could become? Do you look at them as a project? Or do you have the ability to already see the leader within? That maybe he's not showing up that way, but that guy's already in there. You know what I mean? And I start speaking to the version of you that I know you are, but you haven't quite met yet. It's not about you are here today and here's where you're going to be in the future if you just work your butt off and you do all of these things and you do this. Because when we do that, we still create this huge gap and people feel like projects. By the way, we do this in our marriages. We do this like when we start dating. We do this with employees. Oh, they have so much potential. Wait till what I turn them into. Wait to see what I turn them into.
Yeah.
Instead of, can I see who these people really are? Do I know how to speak life and truth and identity into them? And sometimes they're borrowing some of our confidence because they're like, I don't see myself that way, And I got to say, like, I'm going to raise my hand that I remember back in the day when I was performing, training really hard and training for athletics, and I ended up being a world-class athlete, was winning lots and lots of races. But the reality was, before that, I went through a very long season in my life where I did not see myself as an athlete. I had been told when I was younger, I was slow. I sucked at sports. I sucked at athletics. So for so many years, my identity was like, I'm not a fast runner. I'm not an athlete. I'm not even going to try. And so I held back because I had that ceiling on myself because of what somebody in like third grade had told me, like, you suck. Well, it was over the years, it was finding those people who spoke identity into me, didn't look at me as a project, but they're like, you are an athlete. You just forgot, and as I saw people who believed in me and who saw me in ways that I didn't even see myself. And I just started, all of a sudden I started borrowing some of that belief, and I started seeing myself, and then I started trying, and all of a sudden I started winning races, or I started getting faster, and I was like, well, damn, what if I'm actually good at this stuff? Well, that's how I ended up being in that position of not only being a world-class athlete, but then coaching people who are doing Ironmans and longer races, and being the coach of a facility, and then opening my own facility. And it's the same principles back then that I look at now, and I'm just going to wrap it by seeing how we speak over our kids. I think about, some of us have kids in high school. Some of us have babies, like younger kids. Your kids were over here last night. And it's a mistake that we also make when we're talking about our kids. It's like, man, I see the woman you can become. I see the guy that you're going to become, instead of like, I know who you already are. I already know. It's like Jeremiah 29:11. I'm just going to throw a scripture in here because I'm biblically based, but I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. You may not know it yet, but this is who you actually are, even though you may not be acting like it right now. When we speak identity into people, man, it just does something to them that's transformative.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really powerful. That's really powerful to be able to, you opened it up by saying to prophesy over them, right? So it's not necessarily speaking to just like what maybe could be, but for you as a leader to actually see, like, if you can see the potential. So it's almost like it's not good enough to just say, I see the potential in you.
I'm just debunking that whole word potential. It's like,
it's
that's what we're used to saying.
That's like that. Yeah, I think people are used to saying, well, I can see the potential in them, but we're not actually speaking to what we see.
Yeah, we're still speaking to the version of them that's not there yet. And I think that's the biggest gap. I still am speaking to you like you're incompetent, but one day you'll be competent. Or I'm still speaking to you like you're weak. But when I was training those people in the gym or training the athletes, I was already speaking to them as they were champions. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you already have the six pack. You just can't see it yet.
Yeah.
Just let's keep getting rid of what's on top.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's probably very common for people to hear that they have potential, right? Like, whether we're in a yearly review or we're just starting a job, or maybe you're young, like, oh, you have so much potential, right? But like, going back to, and you took this super deep right away, which is awesome, because I think that's where it goes to, because like, I can tell a coaching client, because I hear from their boss and I talk to them, and then they're like, help me unlock this person's potential. And then I go and I have a conversation with that employee, right? Yeah. And I can say, I see so much potential in you. Your boss sees so much potential in you, but it's like, but they don't see it, right? And that's really what we're talking about. And I can say that, but if they don't believe it, they'll never realize that potential. So going back to like what you said, Mark, I forget how you exactly said it, but it's not enough just to say you have so much potential. We actually have to say why, or like what it is that we're actually seeing. Like, why do we see that? Like who they really are, so they can help, so they can start to see it themselves. Because a lot of times, if we're not living up to our potential, right? It's because our belief system, the story that we're telling ourselves, doesn't align with what maybe somebody else is saying.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking like, if somebody tells me, man, I see so much potential in you, immediately, unconsciously, what's actually happening is like, yeah, but I don't have what it takes to do the things. I will fail along the way. That may be true, but it's the gap of what I have to do that I might fail at. So I don't want to face that disappointment in myself, or, I don't want to have that failure. So I just stay here, right? I might believe that I have the potential, but I don't believe that I can actually do the things that are required to get there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And then we won't try the things because we don't want to disappoint that person.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's easier to say I never tried than to say I tried, I failed, and I disappointed you. Right? So we'll stay stuck down in what we actually call survival mode. Right?
Yeah.
We'll stay down there, never really actually go through the whole process of going from surviving to thriving because of the fear of disappointment. We disappointed others, right? Or maybe we failed.
Yeah. I almost wonder if that's just like another really good coachable for our leaders. Like, here's a thing that we can coach them on, and that is how to speak to what they see and not to generalize.
Well, and this is something that I do a lot of work around identity with obviously the leaders. Everybody needs identity. Okay. We all have an identity. It's either rooted in a thing, a status, a job title, who is your identity? And that's really what we're talking about, is when I'm working with clients and I ask them, like, who are you? And they'll start, oh, I'm the CEO, I'm the COO, I'm this and that. I'm like, no, but who are you really? And so I'm just going to use an example. And I spent a lot of time on this last week. You're not that role. You're not the title. You're the champion of people. You are the builder of people. And so what we do is we work together to create a really solid identity statement that resonates with them, of like, yeah, it doesn't matter if I'm at Starbucks or at the, whatever coffee shop people go to, or if I'm around the dinner table with my family, or if I'm talking on a sales call or riding in the truck with someone. I'm a champion of people everywhere I go. And that's true if I'm just starting out. And that's also true if I'm at the top, because I could be a champion of my 3-year-old, and I could be a champion of my neighbors, and I can be a champion. Like, everywhere you go, we're speaking to that type of identity that's not tied to necessarily an achievement, right? So whatever that thing is, and I think this is again normalizing conversations about really speaking to who the people on our team are and their unique gifts and their unique talent, like the thing that they bring to the table that's their uniqueness. Because often that what's so natural for people is the thing that they don't think matters. Okay. So if like your gift is really listening and holding space for people and facilitating rooms, like you just have a way to do that. That's just so natural for you. Right. And so we've talked a lot about you being like that quarterback. Like, you're just there. You could see the field. You're passing the ball to people. You want to see people running. You want to set people up for the win. And it's like, yeah, you're that for our family. You're also that at work. You're also there in the rooms. Like, it's not about you running every single touchdown, although you might a few, you know what I'm saying? But it's just a different positioning around identity. And so I just wanted to say that as we're thinking about speaking over people or helping them see themselves in a different way, it might be beneficial to break out of some of this corporate language that we have. And just like, who are you when you really feel alive? You're doing your best work. You feel most connected. Like, who's that guy? Because if that person starts showing up to work every day, I guarantee your results are going to be different. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or that woman, not to be gender, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So this is good. Also, like, I can see potentially even like the same problem showing up for leaders who are listening to this. Like, well, now you're asking me to be a prophet for my people. And I don't mean like that the spiritual context gets in the way. Like, what if I don't know how? Right. And I'm just like, maybe I actually don't have the resources or the tools to be Leonardo, who sees David and
He sees David in the
is the box of
statue.
marble.
It's
If he
like, what-
sees it, and all he's got to do is remove the pieces that are in the way,
Mhm.
right? Which, by the way, is actually from Thriving Leader, is one of the things that we coach people on, that we teach people, is when you have a high potential person, they're highly motivated and they have high ability, right? You just remove roadblocks.
Exactly.
Right? Get the
That's-
roadblocks out of the way and give them better commissions, give them, whatever incentives are important to them. But it's like, just get the stuff out of the way. Don't create complexity in their life. Remove complexity. That is the pathway to helping your high potential people realize even greater levels of growth. Right. But so let's go back, because right now the problem that we're fixing, I always like to bring it back to where we started. The problem that we're fixing is we've got, Dale, who's been on the team for a long time. He's 62 years old. He's got 5 years to go to retirement. He's very comfortable. I can see that he can have an amazing sunset to his career, but maybe he's just coasting.
Mhm.
Right. So let's talk about that guy, or let's talk about, Jed, who's in his mid 40s, who just has kind of hit that slump. Maybe he's got some stuff going on at home, and he's got so much more to give to the team, but he's just going through the motions because maybe life is hard right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you've got, I'm trying to pick a Gen Z name.
Okay. Yeah.
We got Eli. we got Eli, who's 25, right? We can see the potential, right? But he's just like, he's so underwater right now, just trying to figure out life and trying to figure out his new marriage and his 2-year-old kid and, all the things that are going on in his life. And maybe he's a little bit stuck right now. So I just want to put it back on the table. So I'm the leader who's got to help these people, high potential people. And we're going to chisel off the pieces that are getting in the way.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see myself as that leader.
Mm-hmm.
So you're actually stuck in your own problem.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
What do we do with that?
Well, I'm just going to start by saying, no, you do not need to be a prophet, but you do need to be a master at asking questions. So the whole thing of prophesy over your people, I do believe great leaders have an ability to see what other people can't see. So that's what I meant by prophet, is your ability to see, okay, you might be overweight, but I see a fit person. I can see what you can't see. And that's, I think, of a gift of someone who's gone before you. So I just want to say that. So no, you don't need to be a prophet. You don't need to be a seer. You don't need to be able to, but what you do get to do as a leader is have an arsenal or a toolbox of great questions that you're asking people. Because what you're talking about is you do have to be a coach. The truth is, you do got to be a coach. If you're leading people, you have to know how to coach people up. Otherwise, you're going to be talking at them and you're going to be frustrated. And so you need to know how to train or have good training tools around you. You could hire companies and there's lots of ways to train people. But the skill set to develop, this is the employable skill set of great leaders, is the ability to ask great questions. So to me, when you have somebody like that, that's at the end of his career or just starting off, is knowing what question am I going to ask them right now that's going to ignite that identity inside of them. So recently we did a Thriving Leader event in Nashville. You guys remember that? I did a little micro keynote called Effective Immediately. We talked about that point of decision making when you get tired of your own excuses, you get tired of yourself, right? And I kind of took people to that place. Yeah. But then I took them through a guided exercise. And one of that guided exercise was helping them remember what they had forgotten. So I think a great leader helps people remember what they forgot, that they've accomplished, that they've celebrated, who they are. It's recall, recall, recall. And so in this moment with these people, I'd be so curious, can you remember? And I asked the question earlier, when you felt most alive, when you felt most energized, when you were most connected to your work, when you felt most confident, most like yourself, what were you doing? Who were you? Who was showing up? Who was that version of you? And you can ask this question so many different ways, and again, if you guys want coaching on this, this is what we do with our higher level leaders is we teach you how to ask better questions and build that out. Mm-hmm. So the thing is how much heavy lifting is required to sit there and just ask, hey, Jon, when was the last time? Remember the last time you felt like you were on top of the world, like you were just fired up. You knew you were in the right place, doing the right thing. You were excited about life. Do you remember the last time? And when I asked that question in the room, there was some people who said, man, I hadn't felt like that since I was 26.
Wow. Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't felt that way. I haven't been that guy in like 20 years. I haven't been that woman in 5 years. But that woman and that guy is still in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a matter of you being able to pull that person out and have them show up and then ask that person some questions.
Quick interruption to the podcast here. Listen, at the end of the day, most of you have been through some sort of training and development. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably interested in personal and or professional development. And here's the reality. In the corporate space, most of it's bad. Let's be honest. Most of it has been a death by PowerPoint situation that really doesn't progress you, your team. It doesn't move the needle. It's not aligned to business priorities. That is why I really am asking you to take a look at the Thriving Leader program. In the show notes below, go to the link and click through to our Thriving Leader website. The Thriving Leader was designed with the learner in mind. Adult learners today don't need another death by PowerPoint situation. They don't want to waste their time going to a training, being at an event that doesn't actually get them the results and that isn't actually relevant to where they are in life. The three biggest challenges that leaders have today are time management, stress, and work-life balance. The Thriving Leader works to solve those and so many more things. Click on in the link in the show notes, learn about the Thriving Leader, and join us at an upcoming public event and see what it's all about. We believe that today's leaders hold a moral obligation to create environments within which their people can thrive. Whether you're the one leader on your team or whether you're the leader of 10, 20, or more, it's time to see what you can do to create an environment within which you and others can truly, truly thrive. 6 months from now, a year from now, 18 months from now, the time will have gone by. The question I have for you is, during that time frame, are you surviving or are you thriving? Click the link today.
I can't help it. I'll like go back to the movie The Lion King.
Yeah.
Right? Like in the scene where Simba's like battling, and he's being called back to the kingdom, and Rafiki is like whacking him on the head with like his coconuts or whatever the heck that is, right? And he stands in like the in front of the water, right? And he sees his dad, and like the voice comes up and he's like, "Remember who you are." I can't help but think about that when we're talking about it, but to kind of go to bring it back.
We need a Rafiki who's going to beat us with a stick, and we also need to go to the place where we look in the mirror and say, okay, I got to remember who I am.
It is one of the most human things, because at the hero's journey, right? And every one of us is the hero, in our own journey, right? Or the main character in our own story. And in the development cycle, right? When the hero goes on his journey, there's always some sort of spirit guide, right? That shows up, a coach, a mentor, a friend, right? The butt chewing from your dad or your boss or whatever, right? That's like, that catalyzes
it has to be a catalyst.
The development process. Everybody needs a Rafiki, and we're speaking to the leaders. Intentional leadership requires that you develop this skill set.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not saying you got to beat your employees over the head with a stick.
We're not opposed to it.
But that was part of that exercise. If you think back to the Thriving Leader, because before we got to the place where I asked them to remember who they were, I took them through a series of, are you tired of your own excuses?
Yeah.
What is it costing you to stay where you are? And really asking the questions that we keep avoiding also. We're always trying to just like put rainbows on top of things and like avoid the difficult conversations. But I do think it's important. You speak the truth about where they're at and what's that costing them. And then you call up the person inside.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I think that's important. And that's the kind of the point that I wanted to bring to this is kind of a double part here. But as leaders, we need to have these conversations. Right, we need to call our team up and help them realize who they are, what they're capable of, right, or their potential. But oftentimes, as leaders, what I see is they are putting all of the weight on their shoulders for their employees' success or potential.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think they won't have that conversation with them. because they feel like it's their job to do it, but it's everyone's, like you said, it's their own journey.
Yeah.
Right? Like the leader is there to be to be the coach, to be the sage, to be the mentor, the Rafiki, right? But we have to have that we have to have that honest conversation with them and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. I know you have so much more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? And help them remember, like, of a time, like when they were thriving, when they were on top of the world, but understand, we don't have to carry all of the weight.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to carry that conversation.
Yeah.
Is this making sense?
Totally. And I'm thinking like, okay, what does that actually look like when we're doing that? And one thing that I think is really helpful is to separate, to be able to have the courage and the boldness to call out the behavior while also calling up the person.
Yes.
Because sometimes I feel like, well, if I call this thing out, then somehow I'm calling you out. Like, okay, this thing of settling right here, this is not okay. But it's the thing that I'm calling out. It's the behavior. It's the pattern, right? So you can do both. Are you able to identify what is the thing that's not okay and separate it from the person?
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is a skill set that you get to cultivate as a leader, because otherwise you don't bring things up because you feel bad, because you don't want people to feel bad about themselves. Instead of saying, you know what, the quality of this work, this is not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
The quality here, this isn't you.
Yeah.
This isn't the guy I know. Yeah. And so now I've separated you from the work, which is actually where most people get so mashed up. Like, I am my sales results. I am, the last conversation or the last conflict. And so I think a lot of the walking on eggshells that happens inside of leadership and teams is this lack of separation that we have. We just put everything together in a pot. Now we're afraid to bring anything up because we don't want to offend anybody. Yeah. But the reality is, like, can I boldly, and again, you got to be able to train yourself to separate behavior, results, actions from the person.
Yeah.
And speak to both.
Man, I tell you what, I had an ag teacher back in the day as I was graduating high school and moving on to university. He was actually a teacher in a different school, Mr. Funk from Sabika. But he was in the region, and I was, I had a relationship with him anyway. And he was on this committee for scholarship selection. And I had applied for this scholarship, and he cornered me. We were at the state FFA convention, and he came up to me and he got me alone away from everybody else. But he's like, listen, I'm on the committee for the selection for this scholarship. And he's like, listen, I vouched for you because I know who you are. I know the quality of the person that you are, but what you put out in terms of your scholarship application is not a reflection.
Come on. That's exactly what
it's not a reflection of who I know you to be. He said, I vouched for you to get that scholarship, and it'll, the committee will decide whatever the committee decides. But you need to show up better, and put your.
Maybe we would reframe some of the.
And I'm of course paraphrasing, and this was 25 years ago. But that coaching conversation has stuck with me, and now, when you look, when I'm putting together proposals for clients, to this day I invest a lot of time in every single one of those proposals, making sure, and I'm always looking for better ways to do the proposals. And I've had so many iterations of that over the years because technology advances and we can keep making them better and better. That is something I'm to this day because of that conversation, right?
Powerful.
It's such a power. I say that that's what is that? It's just a piece of paper. It's a document. No big deal, right? But he's like, hey, the quality of individual that you are is so much better than what you are representing in this thing, and the world deserves to see a better version of you.
Yeah.
And that was such a powerful conversation. And so I wanted to share that because nobody's going to remember years down the road the employer or the leader who was being nice because they were afraid that you might quit, that the person might quit or would be offended. Mm-hmm. Right? They're going to remember the person who actually made the time to have the hard conversation, right? To have that constructive, to give the constructive criticism, to chisel away a little piece of the marble, to expose the muscle, right? That's laying underneath. Mm-hmm. So That's good. This is a great conversation, guys. This is a big topic. I know a lot of people, really struggle, and you guys have given them some pretty practical stuff. Well, and John, I want to go to this the last thing because we do a lot of this within our Thriving Leader program. We do what's called experience before learning, right? Talk a little bit about how we do that and like the importance of giving people the experience before we go and start preaching.
Yeah. So how we actually do it at the live events is we get everybody up, hit the gym at about 6 o'clock in the morning, right? And we go through a workout.
And they all have 6-packs by the end.
And they all have 6-packs. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. So if you want a 6-pack, come to the events. No, but what happens is we actually take them through the workout, and it's usually a pretty good workout. People get they get sweated up, whatever. It's we haven't killed anybody yet, which is good. But what that does, it unlocks a lot of doors for us. One, it increases the vulnerability. It helps us to connect to them and get people to share more at the start of the live event.
Yeah.
But when we actually call people out and say, most folks, or it's common for most folks, not to invest in themselves or infuse themselves, especially physically.
Yep.
Right? They've already had that experience where they're like, oh yeah, I mean,
can't call. Yeah.
I struggled a little bit at the workout, so yes, there is room for growth, right? So we brought them through the experience rather than just saying, hey, you've got the potential to be in better shape. Because if we'd have just said, hey, you got the potential to be in better shape, we just said that rather than put them through the workout.
That makes you a jerk.
That makes us a jerk. Yeah, exactly. And then they'll fold their arms, they'll sit back in their chair, and then whatever we say from then on, they're not even open to.
Yeah.
But since we exposed them to that workout and they experienced it, now they're a little bit more receptive to that. And that's one of the things, like, I actually have this written down is when we have this open and honest conversation with our folks, with a team member that we see that there is so much more to them. Mm-hmm. Like I've got it written, I got it written down is after this conversation, we have to challenge them a little bit.
Yeah.
We have to get them to experience that there is more, right? So maybe it is a stretch goal, maybe it is a little bit of a challenge, so they can see that I actually can do this, right? So then, because that starts to chip away at their belief system. For those that don't believe they're capable of more, let's help them see that. Yeah. And then they have that experience and like, oh, maybe this guy isn't full of BS, right? Like maybe I can actually do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to challenge them.
I love that. I'm so glad you brought that up because I was about to say that, like, talk about the challenger, and you said it so perfectly. And as you were talking, that's like the Rafiki thing. We take them to the workout, we beat them up a little bit, and then we have like, oh, remember what it felt like when you were fit, or how does it feel now on the other side? Mm-hmm. But I want to just tap into that real quick because we have to also, again, I mean, I'm going back to like, what are the skills that great leaders need? And we've talked about like asking better questions, understanding how to coach, like the ability to see and separate, behavior or results from identity. And also, we need to know what the people need at different stages of the game. And there are many times when people in this position, they need a challenger to show up. Mm-hmm. They need an opponent to show up. That's like, there is no David without Goliath a little bit, right? They need that person in their life that's going to force them to a little bit to put on the boxing gloves and fight for something. Yeah. And there's times to be the inspirer and the motivator and the encourager, right? Sometimes when people are like, man, I'm barely like holding on with a breath here, they might need the encourager to come alongside them. They might need somebody that inspires them. But challengers create the greatest transformations. They just do. We don't always love them in the moment. In fact, they usually piss us off in the moment, right? But they're the ones that were often the catalyst for us to be like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. Because they put something inside of us. I'm thinking like the David Goggins and like, is it David Goggins? Yeah, right? He's a challenger. He's like a classic challenger. Tony Robbins, classic challenger, right? They're like challenging your belief systems. They're challenging you to like, are you really happy right now? They're asking the questions that make you want to squirm. And often you're like, oh, don't ask me that. But they're the ones. that like they might not like you for a minute, but they'll go sit in their truck and they'll think about what you just said, and they might react out of anger or whatever, but at least they got fire, because now they got fire. You took them from apathy to emotion.
Yep.
And they need something. They need to be either pissed off enough to do something, or they need to be inspired enough to do something, but you got to get them out of the place of apathy.
Yes.
Yep. Big time.
So it's okay to be a challenger.
So good. Yeah. And, I think the results speak for themselves with the Thriving Leader program. We're not really a fitness company. We're not really a nutrition company. I mean, we talk about these things. We don't do a lot of that coaching anymore, but, we've had hundreds of people choose to get healthier.
Yeah.
Right. People that have, whatever it's quit smoking or, reduce their drinking, or I remember Kevin last year, he went from like lots of extra smoking and lots of extra drinking to, reducing or quitting all of it, and, doing Tough Mudders and these challenge races, and that, and he's mid-40s, right? I mean, he's made significant change, and that's had a positive, long-term effect, downstream effect for his family and for his business. So there's a lot of those. We've had a dozen people that have lost 100 pounds that just because of the experience, and then they debriefed it, then we talked about it. And then they just made that choice. And so the formula for that, for those of you that are trying to implement, is just anything that's worth doing is worth debriefing. So when somebody goes out and does it, then talk about it. And it could be literally any activity, any behavior, and maybe it doesn't go well, maybe it goes perfectly. Either way, debrief it, talk about it, talk it through, and that's how you help to chisel away a little bit more of that potential that all of you can see. So, guys, this is another good one.
Yeah.
Thanks for diving.
I like this conversation.
Yeah.
It's a good one. Hey guys, for those of you that are tuning in, if you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify, listening on Apple Podcasts, hit the subscribe button, hit that follow button. I think it is on Spotify. Subscribe to this. Make sure you're getting the updates. Go on down to the what do they call it at the bottom of these?
The links, the show notes.
The show notes. Head on down to the show notes. I don't know why I can't get that word today, but go on down to the show notes and jump on the email list. Make sure that you're getting these. We shoot out an email every time we drop an episode. And so whether that's the Intentional Ag Leader podcast or Christine's Breaking Chains podcast, you'll get that email every time that the episodes go out. So you get notified first right away. Get this, and then finally share this. Get this in front of somebody else's earbuds and truck speakers that needs to hear the message today.